Welcome back to Running Your Best Life. Today, I am joined by someone who's redefining what endurance coaching looks like. Chris Bagg, founder of Campfire Endurance Coaching in Bend, Oregon. If you ever dreamed of training in one of the most beautiful endurance capitals in the country, this episode is for you. Chris and his team have built a camp that is as much about connection and purpose as it is about performance. And we'll talk about how that model works, what athletes can expect, and why this kind of environment can completely transform your training. We'll also dive into something I'm personally excited about, the idea of bringing some of my own athletes to Bend next May, and maybe even creating a camp like this one day in the future. Welcome to the episode, Chris.
Thanks for having me so much, Victor. I'm excited to talk to you about all this stuff.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get started by you telling us, how did you get into triathlon training?
Okay, great question. So I was a collegiate soccer player. I played all the way through the end of college. I was a goalkeeper, so that doesn't quite feel like that sets me up for an endurance career. But most college soccer programs have this very odd test. I think it's called the Cooper test. I hope it is defunct by now. Basically, you have to run 2 miles in under 12 minutes. And for most collegiate soccer players, that's should be doable, but is actually pretty difficult. And but I'm an inveterate rules follower. So every year I trained through the summer, and I was usually first or second across the line in the Cooper test, which for somebody who then spends 90 minutes standing in one place, not doing anything endurance related, that was always a little bit odd. So that was kind of my first inkling that I could probably do this and do it fairly well. I was a swimmer growing up, but like a lot of youth swimmers, totally burnt out by the end of high school. Like I did not want to see the inside of a pool at any time. So got out of college, moved to DC for my the job that I had. I was working Tuesday through Sunday, and there are not any adult soccer leagues that exist on Mondays in Washington, DC. So I picked up running, and I would run around the Washington Mall every morning, and I did my first marathon. I ran a 3:11. I missed qualifying for Boston by 61 seconds in my first marathon. But the guy who was running the running program was like, that's pretty good that you were able to do that on your first go. Maybe you've got some talent in this. I hated DC, and so I bought a bicycle to kind of escape the city. And eventually somebody was like, okay, you grew up swimming, you like biking, you're a pretty good runner. Have you heard of this thing called triathlon? And I was like, sure. And I think my first triathlon, the night before, I was at a square dance. And somebody was like, hey, there's a triathlon in Brunswick, Maine at Bowdoin College. You should go do it. And I literally signed up the night before, went and stumbled through it. And I think I won my age group, and I was 6th or 7th overall, and was like, oh, okay, I like this. And I had been running a bunch by that point. I'd done a couple marathons and things like that. But that was the real start. And that was in 2003. So 22 years ago.
Wow. 2003. That's pretty close. I ran my first marathon in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty cool. Awesome. And then what got you started with the Campfire Endurance? How did that come about?
Well, like sometime around 2009, I'd been racing professionally for a few years by that point. I got my pro card in triathlon in 2006. I was still a high school English teacher at that time, but eventually I turned 30 that year, and it was like, okay, well, you got a couple choices here. You can either keep teaching, or you can try to be a full-time athlete. I really wanted to give being a full-time athlete a crack, but I certainly didn't have the results to pay all my bills. And so the way I got into coaching was wild. I actually sold a wheel set to someone in Australia. And this was back in the day before tubeless. I don't know if you are familiar with tubular tires, but the old style that you would glue onto the rims. And I sold him a set of tubulars, and he sent me an email and said, I don't know how to glue tires onto these things. Can you tell me how? And I think I sent him a 4-page email in response. And he was like, oh, you seem like you're into this. Can you help me be a better triathlete? And I was like, sure. And that was my first athlete. Shout out Shane Harrison in Canberra, Australia, who I believe is a diplomat now. Really cool. He's like a diplomat in the Australian service. And I coached him for a few years, and then I picked up my first group of like actual coaching athletes here in the States. This little group of 4 athletes from Olympia, Washington, who I will forever refer to as my Olympians. And those were the first 5. And at that point, the company was called Chris Bagg Coaching Group. I hadn't yet figured out that having your name in the business, can sometimes cause some like just difficulties and whatnot. And so in 2022, I rebranded the company as Campfire Endurance Coaching. I've worked at summer camps. I've gone to summer camp. Like, it's a big part of my life. And I really think that, there's too much, like, triathletes take themselves way too seriously. And like, we really do need to remember that, yes, this is difficult. And yes, it can lead to a lot of like self-actualization and self-realization, which I think is really important. But it's also fun. And like, camps are fun and triathlon is fun. And we should all remember that this is about community and development. And whether that development is personal, emotional, intellectual, or physical, those are things that happen at summer camp. Like, kids learn how to be better people when they're at summer camp, but they also have fun. And that's been the motto and sort of the vision the whole time. And so in 2022, we just decided to like actually call the company Campfire.
Oh, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. I like it. One of our ethos and slogan at Team Blazer Triathlon Club is enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And kind of meaning the same thing. Don't forget that we're doing this for fun for the most part. So let's not forget that. Awesome. And Campfire gives that also, feeling of telling your stories, around campfire. That's pretty awesome. And I hear from the website that I was looking into your website about the camp, and you do talk about getting together and having that community and sharing stories.
It's so important. I mean, like, people get into endurance sports often because they are chasing some kind of result, or they think that running a certain speed or is going to mean something to them. And yeah, those outcomes are important. They set the course of where we want to go. But all of the stuff along the way, like you're saying, the journey, like, that's where all the magic happens. And definitely getting together with other people and talking about it is a big part of that, because we want to feel proud of our accomplishments. It's always a balancing act between, a healthy ego and a maladaptive ego, because we've also seen, you see plenty of maladaptive egos in triathlon.
Yeah, I think we get a wrap on that. What distinguishes Campfire from other triathlon camps or other camps in general?
The camps or the company in general.
I think the company, and maybe you can just talk a little bit about what makes it more different. This triathlon camp, I have not visited any triathlon camp, so I have no comparison of what one would feel like versus the other. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, what differentiates the company? So I think I'm one of the few triathlon coaches out there who is really thinking about an athlete's complete development. And I'm not just talking about, again, like, not just times and physical development and physiological improvement and things like that. That's all important. Like, that's all stuff that happens along the way. But I think something that I'm really good at is also approaching the athlete's intellectual and emotional sides. Like, intellectual parts of the sport are going to be things like strategy, tactics, understanding your equipment. That is a huge one. Understanding your devices, knowing race courses, knowing nutrition, all of the sort of like skill-based stuff that is separate from the actual training, the actual physiological training. And so the intellectual part of triathlon is huge. There's so much equipment, there's so many logistics, there's so many extra skills that you have to master and think your way through. If you think about transitions, that's an important one. If you think about equipment management, holy crap, there's so much stuff in triathlon. And so like the intellectual side of things, I think is really important. And that's a piece that I actively try to help people learn, so that so that on race day, they are not surprised by, okay, my smartwatch just did something ridiculous. Like, how do I fix it? I lost a bottle. Okay, how do I adjust my nutrition plan? Because I really coach the athletes to understand what the goal of effective race day fueling is. I don't just give them a plan, though I do that as well. It's a classic, like, don't teach a man to fish. Don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish. And then I think the emotional side is an untapped area of performance. And that is something that I have a lot of ability to talk about, like understanding emotions, understanding feelings, getting men to talk about their feelings. That is a crucial part of it. My female athletes tend to do a little bit better about talking about emotions. Women just are a little bit better about that. They've been conditioned to understand their emotions a little bit better, and men are the opposite. And so really, like, when I'm working with somebody, we're talking about the whole athlete. We're talking about their physical abilities, intellectual abilities, and emotional abilities. And we do the same thing at camp. So like there are, I don't know if the camp is hugely different from other triathlon camps. um like a lot of triathlon camps, it's pretty bike heavy, because that's the place that people usually can generate the most fitness, is on the bike, because it's where you spend the most time in the race. It is it's non-load bearing, so it's not impact based like running. I mean, swimming isn't impact based either, but it is a hard sell to get somebody to swim 12 to 15 hours a week to improve their aerobic conditioning. It would probably work, but riding a bike for that amount of time is more fun. So a lot of camps are very bike heavy because it gives us a chance to really rack up a lot of training hours. And so at camp, we do two big rides, 2 5 to 7 hour rides. We get in a couple recovery spins, of course. We run every day, mostly off the bike, but we do one long run. And then we'll also do like how to do a fartlek run, how to do a hill run, stuff like that. And then we swim 4 times over the 4 days. So we get 3 pool swims and an open water swim in. So the schedule is packed. We really hit the physical side of things, but we also hit the intellectual side of things, because you got to balance all of that time. You got to like get to workouts on time and things like that. You got to fuel yourself. But the benefit of any camp is that the rest of the stressors in your life get subtracted. So, family stress, job stress, friend stress, hobby stress, like all of the other things that are in your life, like there's no such thing as compartmentalizing in terms of stress. Like, it doesn't exist. People talk about it. No, your body sees stress as one bucket, and that's it. And when that bucket starts overflowing, you are not going to absorb your training anymore. Basically, when your body is stuck in fight or flight, you do not absorb training as effectively as when you're more relaxed. Like, this is just a well-known thing. But so many triathletes like lean into the, like, I'm a stressed out person kind of persona.
Yeah.
And and there's this whole like, oh, I'm doing all this training, like, isn't my level of stress amazing? And it's like, no, that sucks. Like, that is going to like hurt your training. And that's something that we do at camp, is we remove those other stressors. So you can get some rest and just train. Like the training camps that I went to when I was a professional, much longer, we're talking 15 to 20-day camps, but the same idea. We're really just eating, sleeping, and training. And that's a very productive training environment. And we try to create that at camp. Emotionally, you are probably going to find yourself at your emotional limit at some point at camp. And that is intentional. A unofficial motto of Campfire is, if you are crying, you are definitely learning. That's a little tongue in cheek, and it sounds like I'm being a bit of a dick, but it's true. Like when we are pushed to our emotional brinks, regardless of what the emotion is, whether it's joy, anger, sadness, frustration, those are all opportunities. Those are chances to figure out what is going on for us emotionally and see if it is helpful or if it is less helpful. You are never going to master your emotions. You are never going to be in control of your emotions. Those are ridiculous and far-fetched ideas. Your emotions are chemical reactions that you are not in control of. But what we can do is we can recognize what's happening and make a plan. So let's see, I'm going to throw the male age groupers under the bus here, because male age groupers screw up women's racing all the time, usually through an emotional mindset, emotional fault. So in triathlon, we do not give the female professionals enough buffer between their start and the age group men start. It's usually something like 5 minutes or so. And somewhere on the bike, some of the age group men will start catching the professional women. And they don't understand the drafting rules, and they tend to get in the way. And then what will happen is some of the female pros will be like, this is messing up my race. I'm going to pass this age group man to get out of this position. Female pro passes age group man. Age group man suffers a little emotional moment of like, I don't want to get chicked. Everybody, let's get rid of that term. That is an incredibly reductive and stupid term, and let's lose it forever. So he experiences a little emotional moment and is like, I'm not going to let her pass me. She's a girl. And then passes her back. And in doing so is deviating from his race plan in a way that is probably not going to help. And so due to his inability to recognize his emotions and come up with a proper plan, he is not only messing up his race, he is also messing up someone else's race. And if we can recognize these little emotional triggers that we have that pop up on race day, because when you are racing an endurance event, the whole point is that your emotions get close to the surface. And we need to be able to respond to those emotional changes in ways that help our racing, not take them away from us. The only things you're in control of on race day are your attitude and your effort. And attitude is a huge part of your emotional control. You've probably experienced something before where when you are feeling positive and joyful, the training is so easy. Like, it's easy to go fast, it's easy to go hard. And when you are sad, it really doesn't come as well. And so figuring out what is going to set an athlete up for a positive emotion on race day is just a crucial skill. And so that's one of the things that we expose people to at camp, because you get really tired. And that final day when we're still doing a run workout and we are doing open water skills practice in the pool, where we stuff 6 people in a lane at a time, that is definitely a moment when people's emotions come to the surface. And it's a great chance for those people to then learn, okay, what are some triggers for me? Like, oh, when I'm tired, I don't like swimming next to other people. Well, guess what? You're in a triathlon. You have to swim next to other people. So let's figure out a way that you know that you're going to have that emotion and that we can respond to it in a way that is actually positive and doesn't screw up your race plan or screw up somebody else's race plan. Because, like, don't do that, please
Yeah.
don't.
There's because triathlon, it involves three sports, and some of them require so much more equipment than basic running.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, There seems to be so many uh, between the equipment, the etiquette, the rules. It's quite a bit to digest, and I think that's so awesome that you have a camp where people can learn maybe things that they didn't know, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so vast and such involves so many uh, things and so many variables. I have so many questions that come up. Like, one is, does everybody bring their own bike to the camp?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody brings their own bike. And there's a bunch of bike stores in town that can help you with reassembly if you need it. We also always have somebody who can help out with bikes and bike maintenance and all that stuff. But yeah, bring your own bike. People always ask, should I bring my tri bike or my road bike? My answer to that is, I mean, whenever you start your season, it doesn't really matter what bike you're riding, but as you get closer to your race, you should move it more and more towards your triathlon bike. So if you're coming to camp and the camp is the end of May, early June, and you are racing, Coeur d'Alene 70.3 or something like that, which is just a few weeks later, I'd be like, bring your tri bike. That's you want specificity at that point in your training. But, maybe your next race isn't until September. I'd be like, just bring your road bike. You're going to be so much happier. You're going to be so much more comfortable. But yeah, people bring their own bikes. People bring their own wetsuits because we do an open water swim. And so it's a lot, it's like packing up to go to a race. You got to bring all your stuff. and, and it is, I mean, you're right. Triathlon is so logistically intense. It is more of a logistical challenge, I think, than a physical challenge.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that comes up right now is, does anybody, when they come to your camp, feel like they may not belong? Or maybe just hearing it say, hey, I'd like to go this, but what are some of the myths that we could bust right now?
Sure, totally. I think that almost everybody that goes to a new event or a new camp or a new training group has that feeling of like, I don't know if I belong here. Um, a poem that I love that I quote very often in triathlon. If you don't know Yeats's The Second Coming, amazing poem, early 20th century. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a line in it that goes, "The worst are full of passionate intensity, and the best lack all conviction." I know many people in the triathlon world that have passionate intensity that are, see above comment about maladaptive egos. And I think a lot of the best people out there do struggle with that problem of lacking conviction. And it is difficult to go to a new camp. But the thing that I always tell people is like, I'm like, okay, imagine, like, I usually ask them, like, okay, tell me your hobbies. Like, what are some hobbies that you're a part of? And somebody will be like, I play pickleball. I'm like, okay, cool. When a new person that you have not seen walks onto the pickleball court, are you like, I hate that person, they suck, I'm going to make them feel as bad about themselves as possible? It's like, no. Like, most good people are ecstatic that there is another person that has joined their hobby. When I used to coach the master swim group at Nike, same thing. People would be like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I would belong." And I would just be like, "Look, people are excited for new people to be there. Like, that is a positive thing." And so if you can remember back to moments when you yourself were welcoming somebody into something new and how excited you were, just try to remember that. And then also, like, normalizing really helps. Everybody has a difficult time at camp, but we also adjust the distances. If, like, you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can do a 90-mile ride with 7,000 feet of climbing and then follow that up 2 days later with an 105-mile ride with 3,000 feet of climbing. We have ways that we can adjust those distances, so we can shorten the ride so that everybody sort of stays a little bit more together, because that's so important when you're out training in a camp, not just for safety, which is the big reason. Like we don't really want people just riding by themselves. That's can be obviously a problem. But remembering that most of the other people at camp want you to be there, and knowing that we can adjust all the distances, whether it's swim, bike, or run, to make people, to meet people where they're at. Because like, if you haven't ridden, 215 miles in 4 days, camp is probably not the place to like try that out. I mean, maybe if you've ridden like 185 miles in 4 days, then it's like, all right, that's within the realm. That's sort of like 20% above that number. You're going to be fine. But if like your biggest volume ever is like maybe you've ridden 90 miles in 4 days, it's like, let's adjust some of the distances on the rides just so that athletes are actually having success. And what we do is we're a little bit more aggressive with limiting people on that first big ride. And then if they're feeling good for the second big ride, we're like, yeah, go for it. That's the only thing we're doing today is this 100-mile bike ride. Like, so we're out there with a car. If you need to climb off, you can climb off, but here's a chance to do your first century, and every year we have people that do their longest bike ride on Friday and then their longest bike ride on Monday. And like, it is like awesome to see how excited they are, that they're like, I rode 85 miles on Friday and then 105 miles on Monday. Like, and they're just so freaking stoked. And that's just a really, really great feeling.
That's awesome. And I know from our last week conversation, I was asking you what kind of a deal we could get for my triathlon club. And from that, I've got a few other questions, like how many people does your camp, ones that you offer once a year, is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. This big camp is once a year.
And how many people can you accommodate?
We keep it low. We keep it below 20. We're always aiming for around 18 to 20 people, but no more than that. Because, we put you up in a hotel, so that's part of it. Like we keep everybody together at one very awesome hotel. It's called Lodge Camps. Awesome. More camp. And it's this really cool, like sort of, it feels like a commune. There's like all these different buildings and there's like food carts and music. And it's a really, really cool facility. And so everybody stays there together. And so that's one of the reasons that we keep it small, is because, like I've committed to renting, 18 of those rooms. And so like, I don't want to like have to, leverage myself too much. So, and then the other reason is that, my coaching is small batch coaching as well. I keep a limit of 15 to 17 athletes tops. And so that's why the numbers at camp are sort of small. We cook every breakfast for you. We provide 2 dinners. We do all of the like training, nutrition, and all of that stuff. And so if we had like a 40-person camp, it would be really difficult to take care of all of that stuff. And so that's why we keep the numbers sort of on the smaller side.
Oh, awesome. That's good to know, because I didn't know that, and I was already saying, hey, I'm going to take between 10 and 20 people.
Hey, if you do that, we're got about a third of the spots are taken already, so I think we've 6 people signed up for next year. So we've got like 12 spots around, like if there's a groundswell of interest, we could figure out a way to add maybe 1 or 2 more spots. But yeah, keeping it on the smaller side is important, because one of the most important things as a coach, and this was a great little piece that I learned from Bill Brenner. He used to be the head of US Masters Swimming. I don't know if he still is, but this is way back. This is one of my earliest coaching certifications. And he asked us all, what is the most important piece of information that you need to know about your athletes? And, everybody is like, thinks about it and, gets a wrong answer. And he's like, their name. And at every camp that I have ever run, and I think the biggest camp I've run was about a 60 to 70 person camp, I made sure I had everybody's name by the end of day 2 memorized. Because and it's the same thing with coaching. Like, if you cannot run through all of the athletes that you coach in less than 30 seconds, you're not coaching, you're writing training plans, and that's, like what I do is a very personal, high touch kind of coaching. And the camps kind of reflect that, because you really, really have to know who you're working with. Like, that's just a crucial part of being an effective coach.
All right. Good to know. I am getting ready, or I was getting ready to I'll pitch this idea to my triathlon club, but since they're going to listen to the podcast, most likely you can start to tell me some of the questions that might come up, like, do I need to prepare myself? Who is ready for a camp? Who this may not be for?
Mm-hmm.
Little things
Yeah,
like.
totally. Like, this is all on the website also. And so, like, have people be able to go and look and learn all this stuff. But, you need to be able to swim about 200 meters without stopping, and hopefully, like, you can do that already as a triathlete. If you don't know how to swim, well, this is probably not the camp for you. If you don't know how to swim, find somebody who, find a good triathlon or swimming coach, and, and get them to teach you how to swim. But if you can't swim 200 meters without stopping, probably there's other stuff as well that, like, is, not going to work. And so I would sort of say, on the swim side, that's it. On the bike side, it's like, you need to be able to ride about 30 or 40 miles without stopping, because on the longer rides, we do have stops. We have significant stops. On the 100-mile ride, there's basically 3 stops. On the other ride, there's like 1.5 big stops. So you never need to really ride more than 30 or 40 miles at a time without stopping. But if you can't do that, that's also a sign, just like that, if you can't swim 200 meters without stopping, that probably your fitness is not in a place yet where you need a camp like this. I would say, go back, keep building your endurance, keep building your conditioning, swim, bike, and run for fun without, workouts or stuff like that. Just enjoy yourself, just build up your volume. And then on the run, I would say, like, you need to be able to run 50 to 60 minutes without stopping. Like, if you can do just a normal middle distance run, and those 3 things are kind of, like, I would say, necessary. So who are we talking about? We're talking about, like, we are still talking about people who are fairly new to triathlon, because most people in their first year or 2 of triathlon can do those 3 things. They can swim 200 meters, they can ride 30 or 40 miles without stopping, they can run for an hour without stopping. And so that's really it. Like, any other than that, like, and the only reason for that is that if we do have athletes that are outside of those ranges, we only have one big vehicle out there on the big rides. And if there is somebody who can't do it and they're sort of lingering at the back, they are taking up more resources than we can afford to give them, because we have other people at the camp that also need support. And so it becomes a safety thing about having the group 2 spread out. And it just ends up being like, the ability range is too wide. But if you can do those 3 things, you will have a great time at camp.
What about the speeds? Because being in the triathlon club for, I don't know, I've been in this club for about 15, 20 years. More like 15. But having different speeds, like a lot of the older athletes may have really good bike and can swim good, but they pretty much almost 80% of their run is walking. 15, 14, some even between 10 and 11 um, minutes per mile.
Mhm.
So yeah, within those ranges, can they be in the camp?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pool is really easy. We always get 3 or 4 lanes per workout. And, one of the things that we do right off the bat is we test everybody's threshold swim pace. That's the first workout we do is we get people warmed up and then we do a test. And sometimes people think that's intimidating. A swim test is a lot easier than most swim workouts. A swim test, you have to swim 600 meters hard. We do a 200 really hard and a 400 really hard. And most normal swim workouts, you're going to do more hard swimming than that. But we get a test right off the bat. And what that does is that allows us to sort the athletes into different lanes. And so in swimming, you're going to very quickly be the same in a lane with other people that are similar to your speed. And we adjust the workout distances accordingly. So, like some of those lanes that might go a little bit slower, a swim workout for them, they might just do like 1,500 to 2,000 meters. And then some of the people that are faster on the pointier end, they might do 4K in one of our workouts. So the swim is really easy, because like basically you've just got, it's a captive audience. You can control really easily for speeds and whatnot. On the bike, what we do, and I sort of said this, is, we kind of like, if you're not sure you're going to be able to hold the whole distance, we shorten the ride up. And we always make sure that people have like a little group of similar paced athletes that they can be riding with. On the big ride, the Monday ride, the like 100-mile ride, the first 90 minutes to 2 hours, I keep everybody together on the bike. And that, some of the faster athletes sort of like that chafes them a little bit. But I'm like, look, every workout you ever do on the bike, if it's a long ride, your first 90 minutes should be pretty darn easy anyway. So just like let it go. We're not doing any racing here. And then after the first stop, we kind of set everybody free. We make sure they've got the course on their bike computer. They've got a couple friends to ride with. And we're checking in with them the whole time via the car, kind of going back and forth. And so again, because we can alter the distance, different paces are really easy to accommodate. And then the run is like the ultimate and easy, a lot. Our long run is this beautiful out and back. It's on a gravel road on the west side of town. And like the Sisters Mountains are like up above you. And obviously out and backs are really easy to control for, because, one thing that I do during the camp is I make sure I know what everybody's next race is. And so like, again, imagine that I've got somebody who is, this camp is like their last big weekend before, Coeur d'Alene 70.3. For them, I would be like, okay, here's your workout. And I'll individually tailor the workouts for everybody, just do a quick little chat with them. Like, okay, like what speed are you hoping to run at for the race? And for somebody in that case, I might be like, okay, give me 90 minutes with 2 20-minute pieces at race intensity, something like that. And so the run is great because like, people usually sort of pod up with other people their speed. And then that way you can kind of keep everyone together. So, and again, this is why keeping numbers low really helps, is because then I can really tailor the experience to the particular athlete's ability.
Okay, awesome. This really, really good information. Mm. And us living in Spokane, Washington, I was thinking we could also save, not just for saving money, but start that camaraderie of riding together in a group from here
Mm-hmm.
to Bend, which I don't know, is it 6, 7 hour drive? Do you think? I haven't looked at it, but
About that, yeah. You're gonna basically come straight down through Washington and then pick up 97, like somewhere around like Biggs or so, and then yeah, and then come straight south. It's a beautiful drive. You're in for a gorgeous drive.
awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. And can we talk a little bit about discounts? And you don't have to get into too much detail because I'll send
Mhm.
email or create something that has it in more detail. But some of the discount that you offer, both Team Blaze and maybe our audience
Mhm.
may have some kind of discount.
Yeah. For Team Blaze, I did the same thing that I do for people on the Campfire team, which is a 10% discount. And the way that you sign up for camp is there's a refundable $600 deposit that, you pay now. It's totally refundable up till the end of January. And so, for people that are getting a 10% discount, that just knocks $230 off of the deposit. So to sign up for camp today, it's only $370. Yes, you do need to do the rest of the payment later, which I think ends up being a little over $2,000. Camp is $2,300. It's a 5-day camp. We do lodging, we do food, we do coaching, we do nutrition. It's still underpriced for a 5-day camp. Because I do want it to remain accessible. So Team Blaze, I offered that 10% discount. That's the same discount that Campfire gets. General audience, probably not going to do a discount for them. That's just important to keep people that, don't have a connection, like your team or Campfire. But get in touch with me. You can send me an email, chris@campfireendurance.com. If you have a really great sob story, you can talk to me and we can work something out. If you are a student, if you are a professional athlete, those are generally populations that have no money. So, and you really want to come to camp, let me know and we can figure something out.
Okay, that's awesome, and that gives them the incentive to sign up for Team Blaze and get the 10% discount.
There you go. Yes, exactly. Yes, sign up for Team Blaze, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think this has been awesome, and I would love to have another one at some point. And I know I'll tell this to my audience. He offered that he would do a webinar to my Team Blaze students if anyone wants. So I say that in the comments below, if there's a topic we haven't covered or if you have any questions, and if you'd like to do a webinar, definitely. I think there's so much more to cover. Like you said, there's so many things curious about it. And maybe in our next episode, maybe talk about some of the technical stuff that happens more often. I'm getting ready to have what I call a Tech Tuesday, where we bring out any problems with technology that people have.
Nice.
And if we can't answer them right there, we will find out what's going on with their tech problem, because I see them more often. And so much new technology keeps coming up that some people even, well, does that even work? They got the form glasses, they got the power for swimming and all this other stuff. I would love to start discussing what works, what doesn't work, and what's worth and not worth too, because some of that stuff is expensive, and you start adding everything with subscriptions and coaching and camps, it can get a little pricey.
Totally. I just put in the chat here for you because we were talking about skills and stuff like that. I've got a 50 question, basically what are your skills holes, as a triathlete? What are the skills that you could use kind of buffing up? Because I think a lot of people don't have that. I love that idea of Tech Tuesday. A question that I always ask people and stuff like that is do you understand your tire system? Do you know if it is clinchers? Do you know if it is tubeless? Do you know if it is tubular? Do you know the difference between those three styles? Do you know how to fix those three styles? The number of people that seem to put flat tire management up to the gods just blows my mind. Or people that are oh, somebody else on my ride will fix that. Or my spouse will fix that. Or the neutral support in the race will fix that. Yeah, there's two... Right. Yeah, exactly. You're going to spend, if you sign up for an Ironman, you are going to spend $8,000 on that race. That's the average spend per Ironman in the United States is $8,000, based on anything. If you want to find out where that source comes from, big shout out to Kelly O'Mara's Triathlon-ish newsletter. Kelly's newsletters are amazing. And she did some really good work in figuring out how much an Ironman costs. So if you're going to spend $8,000 on a race and you don't know how to fix a flat, you must have an amazing income because you're willing to wager huge amounts of money off of something that takes 15 minutes how to learn. and like understanding how to manage a tubeless setup, because more and more bikes are tubeless these days, is really important. And I love that you're doing like a Tech Tuesday thing. That's why I have that skills assessment, is to figure out with the athletes that I coach, like, what do we need to address in terms of, their skills, so I think that is such an important aspect of doing the sport and doing it effectively.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate so much great information, and I look forward to meeting you in person. I'm definitely going to make it a goal to see you next May in 2026. Thank you for being on the podcast. And I'm going to put these links that he offered on the show notes. Where can people find you, which is campfireendurance.com, training camps, and Campfire and the forum, of course. The other thing that I forgot to ask you is, and I asked this of all my guests, is what does running your best life mean to you, Chris?
Running my best life. Like a lot of triathletes, I struggle with overcommitment. Like, it says a lot about people like us that we're like, just doing a single sport, just running, like, that's boring. I want to I want to do swim, bike, and run. I need to learn how to do transitions. I need to learn how to swim. I need to learn how to put on a wet. Triathletes generally are the type of people who really like to fill their plate with a lot of commitments. That's a double-edged sword. You will probably get a lot done. You're probably a type A person. You're probably known among your circle as like that really effective person. But very often hiding behind the effective person is somebody who desperately wants to slow down and take some things off of their plate and focus on what really matters. And when my life is feeling great, I basically have like 3 things on my to-do list every day, and that's it. And those things might be like, go for a bike ride, write my athletes' training plans, get the hotel reservation for camp done. We so think that we can fit more into unit time than we usually can. And when I am living my best life, I am really paying attention to that and not stuffing the day full of things.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah. Each time I seem to hear more and more the people telling me, you need to learn to say no. And I agree. I need to say more to no things, to more things, and take some things off my plate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to our listeners, and I will see you next episode. All right.
Awesome. Sounds great, Victor. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being in our podcast.